recording now. And so we can record this meeting. And so later on, we can allow people to go ahead and listen to this. So what I'm going to do is Steve will be joining us shortly, and I want to begin a demonstration of the software today. What we want to do is go through the program, but most of all, we want to make sure that we address your questions and ideas, things that you want to know about the program. So we'll start with just making sure that we're addressing your questions and concerns. If you have a question or concern, either unmute yourself and ask your question. We have it looks like to me 18 people on the line, and so that would certainly be I don't think it would be too bad to just ask your question directly, or also you could try to do the chat, and we'll monitor that as well. So that'll be the way that we'll handle questions, and we want to be sure to answer your questions as we go through the program. So what I will do right now is I will share my screen, and we'll begin with a demonstration of the program, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, I hope you can see my screen at this point in time. So if you can't see my screen, go ahead and indicate so. Otherwise, I'll assume that we're all looking at my computer screen, and what we will begin doing is I'm just going to start with a client file that we've kind of set up for this demonstration. You don't want to watch me type, so I've just entered in a client file that we've set up for this demonstration, and we'll begin to work with SupportCalc. I understand that we want to talk about the SupportCalc program today, and so that's what we will do. So now as you're looking at my screen, on the left-hand side of the screen are all the different, what we call them sub-programs. We have the SupportCalc, we have the financial declaration, we have the confidential information form, we have the law enforcement form, we have form pack, property calc. I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, sorry.
Say that again, please. Okay, apparently there wasn't a question. Okay, so what we will do in, let's see, it looks like to me there might be a chat question that has come through. What we're going to focus on today, though, is SupportCalc. So I will be clicking on SupportCalc. The program that you have, and what we will be talking about today is SupportCalc, financial declaration, confidential information form, and the law enforcement form. The form pack is the, I guess, the add-on to SupportCalc that includes all of the mandatory family law forms. And that's beyond the scope of our training today. So we'll just get started with the SupportCalc and address your questions as we go along today. So I've addressed, so on this particular screen, you can see that we've just set up some case information. You would just type in the information that applies to your case. I think this is pretty straightforward. I'm not really sure that we need to discuss this in any great detail, other than the fact that there are a couple of features on this screen that may be of interest to you, and that is up here, you'll see that you can either use the current guidelines, or we have also included in SupportCalc the old guidelines, the guidelines from 2019 and before. So if you wanted to go back, say you're doing a child support arrearage case, or you wanted to find out what the child support was back in 2019 and before, I think it was 2009 to 2019 is when the old table was in effect. You could click on this button right here, and it would produce the calculations according to the old guidelines. So that's just some feature that you might want to be aware of. So regarding the children's age, of course, that is it's very possible that the age of the children would change during the course of the case. So what we want to do with the age is instead of just entering a static age, which you can with any.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So Steve, were you able to get the little glitches out, and are you online then, Steve?
I believe I am.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay. So we're all here, and we have many people working with us here, and I've gone ahead and started the demonstration. Steve was having a little trouble getting online, so I thought I would jump in as long as you were online, ready for the training. And Steve, what I've just done is I've gone through the case information screen here and was just about ready to demonstrate the scratch pad for age. And so why don't you go ahead and take over from here, and I'll just click on my screen as you dictate, and we'll walk through the demonstration dealing with the age scratch pad.
So what you have up on the screen, is it combination or just support calc?
I have the combination, and I've explained that the form pack would not be on the product that all the trainees have today.
Okay, so what you probably notice is that there's these little icons that are moving between the different ones. Maybe move down to the 7 now, Tim, so you can see it move. So these two little things move along with you as you go between different items that are asking for input. And the reason why we have these two is the one on the left-hand side is a reference. It's going to tell you it's going to bring up the instructions for whatever area you're looking at. So right here is not really a great one here to demonstrate, but if you want to know what the law says, or a little help in what to put in the particular box, the reference key will help you with that. The other side hopefully looks like a little calculator, and we call this a scratch pad. This is the first instance of scratch pad. It'll become more interesting and more valuable as we go through the different tabs in SupportCalc. Here, click on the tab, and you can see that it shows today's date and the birth date of this child, and it then computes the age for you. And this is important because as the case goes along and the child increases in age, it'll automatically update the age of the child. So the other thing that I want to point out on this screen here is the little box at the bottom says link to child support order. So your SupportCalc only product actually does have some forms in it, and one of them obviously is the child support order, which is very important. If you click on that box, then whatever you do in SupportCalc is going to be reflected in the child support order. So go ahead and click on that, Tim. There you go. So this is very helpful, obviously, because there's a lot of information breakdown on the child support order that will be valuable to you as you go along. And I guess I don't know, do you guys produce these orders? I guess I need to know that question. Anybody? I would think that would be something you would do. So anyway, this will automatically make it happen for you.
We produce the orders in Whatcom County.
Okay, great. All right. So this is this first case information. I also call it the identifying information screen. This is where your parties' names are and those kinds of things. Nothing really is happening here in the way of calculating anything, but this is where you obviously have to set up the case and take a look at the different parties and what they're doing. And I think Tim's already explained we have to fill in the obligor screen because we know that that's the person is going to be paying. So I'm just going to briefly mention, and maybe if we have a little bit of time at the end, we can look more at this, but we also have a way of saving different scenarios for a particular client. May not be important for you guys, I don't know, but maybe. So, I mean, if we had, for instance, different daycare amounts that you wanted to enter in, and it would make a difference in the amount of transfer payment, you can save the first one, put a different daycare amount in, save that scenario, and then you can have those available for you to use in this particular case without having to re-enter all this information. So that's what our scenario what if feature is all about.
So if I click on the what if manager, then you can save whatever has been entered in on these screens would be saved into its own little file. And so you could then load that particular set of information that might have a different amount of childcare, as Steve mentioned. And so that's where you would save, and it would then give you, we've saved a whole bunch here for this particular demonstration, but you could save as many of these different sets of information as you would like. And then of course, if you wanted to load them, you could select one of these and load them later. So you could have all these discrete different sets of information on a particular client, so that you could examine what would happen if this changed, what would happen if that changes, as Steve said, and that would be this what if manager.
And that's particular to the client that you're talking about here too. That there's no carryover from one client to another. This is particular to the client that's up on the screen.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and click on the income screen now. As we know, information in the child support worksheet has to be in a monthly amount, and that may not be what you get from your person. It maybe it's a hourly amount, maybe it's a every 2-week paycheck, maybe it's a yearly amount. This is what a Scratchpad is going to help us do. I see we've already gone here and filled in some information. Go ahead and click on the Scratchpad now, Tim. So we have a $53,000, I believe, annual income that we want to now make into a monthly amount. But it's also important that you have this raw information. So the Scratchpad kind of does two things. So if we click on the calculate and transfer button down at the bottom, it's going to make our monthly amount for us. But go ahead and bring it up again now, Tim. So what also the Scratchpad does now is keep this raw information available for you, so that you know how you got to your monthly amount. And one of the really cool things is the next button down below there says add auto comment. If we click on that, go ahead, Tim, and say yes, it will put this Scratchpad information in the text area of the worksheets. Click on the text button now up above there, Tim. And you can see now that this Scratchpad information has been transferred into the text area.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, so this is actually a really simple Scratchpad. Some of them are a lot more complicated than that show what the raw information was. Click on this side now, Tim. And here's our Scratchpad. And here we have an hourly amount. Numbers are so small, honestly, I'm having a hard time seeing them. So $18.50 an hour, I guess.
Yeah, that's
40,
what it says.
44 hours per week. We're going to put a time and a half factor to the overtime hours. And so we're going to come up with a monthly amount now based on this information that we entered.
You click calculate and transfer, and then
then we come up with the number that's displayed there.
And one of the things that we also recommend is putting in the notes section of these the source of this information. This one's a pretty easy one, but also this again documents your case. So when you're going back to this case after handling 25 cases previously, jump back into this and you know where this information came from. And also this add auto comment is available from any of these Scratchpads.
Right. So obviously there are other forms of income. I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time on that. I think we just want to point them out. We have an imputed table that we just got through updating. This is based purely on gender and age. And according to the instructions from the state, this is to be used when there's no other information available. I mean, if we know what the person's you know, career or whatever, if they're a bricklayer, for instance, we can actually look that up on what does a bricklayer make in, you know, Eastern Washington, for instance. There are actually tables for that. So that would be information that would be used, you know, instead of the imputed table. It's kind of the last resort to use that table, but we do update that all the time. And, you know, so that you have that information available if there's no other way of, you know, figuring out what this person makes. That's different than the imputed box, which we're highlighting right now. So imputed might be, you know, an underemployed person, you know, or we do figure out that the person is a, you know, works on a boat in Alaska or something. We can figure out what he should be making if he's in that industry. So that would be used in the place of actual information about this person. If you put information into here, then you know, that would be what the program's going to use now to compute transfer payment. By the way, I do want to point out real quick too, go up to the box there at the very top, Tim. You know, we are doing a calculation for you instantly every time you make some kind of a change. One time I tried to figure out how many different chain links there were to coming up with a transfer payment. I came up with about 85 different factors that affect the transfer payment. So the program is instantly doing this for you so you can see what anything matters to the transfer payment total. And that's what that little box is that's up displayed at the top up there. Okay, there are other types of income. Again, I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time on this, but you know, people might be self-employed. They maybe they have a side job in addition to some wages. The program here is going to let you put in all the different types of income that you may encounter out there. And this is where that would be done. If a person isn't in business for themselves, you want to put in their gross revenue and what they're claiming as the, you know, expenses, and then coming up with a net amount of you know, monthly income. And this is what happens on this particular screen.
Yeah, let me jump back to the imputed income. I just want you to notice on the right-hand side of the screen, there are some instructions that are given to you about each one of these different kind of items. And under the imputed income, we have a very special link here called the Washington Occupational Statistics. This actually goes to the Washington Occupational Statistics, where you can look up what an actor makes in a particular average and what quadrant they are in the wage the wage table. So this is a really nice resource that's available to you when you are imputing income in terms of I hope I didn't knock us off there. Okay, here we are back on here. So this clicking on the Washington Occupational Statistics, that's a live link that lets you go to that table so that you can fulfill the imputed income, because the imputed income table is the fifth in the priority of all the different ways to impute income. So I'll just point that out as we go along. That this will change for you. And Steve was talking about the business income. So here are some excerpts from the instructional packet from the state about what business income is and how to do that. So you can pay attention to some of these instructions here. That might be helpful to you as well.
So Tim, maybe I don't know this question either. So that occupation table, how often is that updated?
So I'm not sure how often it's updated, but we actually go to the link. You noticed I brought up a browser when I clicked on that link. So it's whatever the state has published at the moment. So that's updated whenever the state, it's a live link to the state's website.
Right. So I mentioned a bricklayer, it would be on that screen. So
it would be, and it has all the search features in it and that sort of thing, because using this imputed income table, that's fifth off a list of all of these, which I don't know when you would ever get to the imputed income table if one of these, you know, is there really a situation where none of these apply, including the minimum wage?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm reading your note here. Yeah, well, actually, we want to point that out too. Tim, let's talk a little bit about the other income and how you can designate what kind of taxes are going to be applied.
Okay, yeah, very good. Yeah, would you like me to describe
Yeah, go ahead.
that
Would you
particular
please?
point?
That's
Yeah,
great.
sure. So we know that these items are just a limited and very generalized categories of income. There are lots of other different income, and these incomes have different tax scenarios. And we will jump into quite an extensive description of how to use the taxes in just a moment. But for now, all I will say is when you put in this other income inside of these boxes, you have the opportunity to check or uncheck any of these taxes. So if some person has some kind of other income that is not subject to Social Security, for example, and there's a lot of income that's not subject to Social Security, you could uncheck these. If you put in $1,000 here a month or something like that, then the program will not calculate Social Security or Medicare on this $1,000 that you entered in here. So for the other income, because we don't know its taxability, we give you the opportunity to set what the taxability is for that particular item of income.
And that's particularly useful for people maybe in the military. I mean, don't necessarily, if they're deployed, maybe they don't have different types of taxes taken out of their income. So this would be how you could do that. And this could be in lieu of wages and salaries. I mean, if their wages are subject to different kind of taxing circumstances, you wouldn't put them in the wages and salaries. You just use this box. Whatever is going to be in here is going to accumulate and become the income for the party that you're talking about.
So another example would be, let's say someone has a lot of rental income. Well,
Right.
rental income is subject to federal tax, but it's not subject to Social Security tax. And so that would be an example where you would want to uncheck those Social Security and Medicare. Social Security and Medicare really applies to wages and salaries and almost none of the other categories, with, of course, the exception being business income, which is the rate is actually almost twice. And so again, we're gonna launch into some tax features of the various income categories, but this gives you the flexibility to produce the correct prospective tax situation for this particular person.
There you go. Well, let's click on deductions and talk a bit about this now.
Okay.
So deductions. So we have made some assumptions that you guys need to be aware of. If you just click through this thing and you don't look at the deductions that we have, using as defaults, it may be completely incorrect. So we want to make sure that you're doing it right. And Tim's the mathematics, so I'm going to let him explain this tax situation a little bit more. So.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take the tax part. So on the income, we entered in some income in these various categories, and each one of these lines has their own taxability associated with it. So when we go to the deductions, the program is going to automatically fill in what the taxes would be for a particular person. And then the amount of support would be calculated up in this screen here. But the important point, as Steve mentioned, is the fact that we've made many assumptions in order to produce a child support amount by simply entering in income. And so I want to go over those assumptions with you for just a moment so that you're aware of them and you can use these to come up with an accurate prediction of what income will be in the future upon which child support is calculated, of course. So you will want to click on the tax options here in order to verify that these assumptions apply to your case and change whatever assumptions don't apply to your case. I'll click on tax options, and on the tax options screen, you will be given several additional options. Two of them of note are the SupportCalc 1040 and the Circular E. So the question is, what's the difference between SupportCalc 1040 and the Circular E? Well, the Circular E is what is used to calculate withholdings from someone's paycheck, which is quite different, of course, than what someone actually pays in taxes. So if anyone ever pays taxes on April 15th or receives a refund on April 15th, by definition, the Circular E is inaccurate because it didn't calculate what that person's tax actually was. The Tax Calc 1040 was designed to accurately calculate what someone's prospective tax situation will be. It uses the Tax 1040 ES form, which ES stands for estimated, which is the estimated tax that someone would pay in a particular year. So we all know that just a few weeks ago, we filed our taxes and either received a refund or paid taxes, but we did that for, of course, 2022, not 2023. The 2023 tax would have to be calculated using the Tax Calc 1040 because that's the 1040 ES form. That's the estimated taxes that someone would pay during the current year. So when we first developed Support Calc, we just had the Circular E as just kind of a way to kind of get started in calculating, getting close to an estimation of what taxes would be. And many people mentioned to us, well, that's not really accurate taxes. We really need to get something that is more refined, something that will do a better job of estimating. And that's the reason why we added later the Tax Calc 1040, that is this estimated tax. And so we recommend clicking on the Tax Calc 1040. If you're going to use the Tax Calc 1040, then click on the Tax Calc 1040 button here, and that gives you a sub-screen. And this is where you can identify all of the assumptions that the program has made and make sure that they do apply to this particular case. So let me just give you some of the defaults that we need to pay attention to. Up here on this very, very top line, we have the question, use AutoCalc income. And notice in this particular case, they are checked, and that is the default. What does AutoCalc income mean? Well, the definition of income between the IRS and between child support enforcement, or between the child support laws of Washington State, they're two different definitions. There's a lot of similarities to them. If you just have someone that has wages and salaries and no other income, they're probably the same. In fact, most of the time they're the same, but there's a lot of difference, especially in more customized income situations, more complicated income situations. The definition of income between the IRS and the definition of income between the child support schedule, they're completely different. So if they are different, what you'd want to do is you'd want to uncheck these check boxes and put in this box the amount of income for which taxes would be calculated. Anything that you enter on this screen on the income tab, for example, that's going to be according to the definition of income from the child support laws of Washington State. But if they're not the same, then you would want to uncheck these check boxes and enter in an amount here in order to calculate the taxes correctly. You decouple the income for child support from the income for the taxes. So that's one of the assumptions, is the income for calculating child support is the same as income for calculating taxes. Okay, then the next line right here is the qualified dividend income. So I'm going to click off of here for just a moment. I will go back to this particular screen here. And when you take a look at this particular screen, you'll see that the dividend income, you have two choices: taxed as qualified income or taxed as ordinary. I'm sorry, let me restate that. Are amounts here taxed as qualified dividends, or are they taxed as ordinary dividends? If they're qualified dividends, there's a different tax rate. And so again, this is a decision that you will need to make, and we default to dividends as qualified dividends. We're not saying that's the way it's going to be in every case. Probably would be a very, very common scenario. So you would see on 1B here, if you had entered income as a qualified dividend income. Well, let me do that. Income, let's put in, $1,000 as qualified income. And then I'm going to click on the deductions tab, tax options, tax calc 1040. And there you see the qualified dividend income shows up there. You can choose the little button on the income tab of whether this is qualified or whether this is ordinary dividends. So that's another assumption that the program makes that you should verify and make sure that that applies to your case. Okay, the other another assumption is, how do we deal with the I'm going to click this. We've been playing around with this particular screen for a moment, and so we have taken off some of the defaults. The default that we have the program set to when you begin a new case, however, would be who receives the child tax credit. The child tax credit is received by the obligee as the default for the program. So if you wanted the child tax credit to be received by somebody else, then what you'd want to do is you'd want to enter in another amount here. So let's say that I wanted to split this into 1 for one parent and 2 for the other. If I put in a 1 here, notice it unchecks this box here, because now we are customizing this for our particular case. And so now these are not automatically calculated as the number of children. We've now decided to split them between the parents. So that's how you would change that particular assumption. Okay. One of the other assumptions we make is, what kind of deduction would be done for this case? We default it to the standard deduction. Very common, probably more common than itemized deductions. However, if you wanted to change this to itemized, you could change this to itemized, and then you could enter in the itemized deductions on this particular screen here. So standard deduction is the default that the program uses there. The other assumption, just a couple of other general assumptions that we make as well, is that all voluntary retirement contributions are less than $5,000 per year. We know that as a restraint on the amount of income. I guess that would be adjusted gross income. Of course, the IRS allows more than $5,000 per year for voluntary retirement contributions, but the SupportCalc program, of course, the definition of income would not allow more than $5,000 per year. So that would be one of the reasons why you might want to enter in a different amount here for income and a different amount for additions and subtractions to income. You'd want to enter in those here in order to match the IRS definitions of income as opposed to the child support definition of income. The other assumptions we make, the high income alternative minimum tax, we do not automatically apply it. We have a module that will allow you to calculate the alternative minimum tax, and that's right here with using this button. It's very complicated formula that is used especially in high income cases when there are a lot of dividends and a lot of stock transactions. That's especially the scenario where the alternative minimum tax would apply. We don't automatically try to calculate that because we need information about when those stock transactions were done. If you clicked on this button here, though, you would be able to enter that information in here, and it would calculate the alternative minimum tax. I want to emphasize that this is an estimate. When you have a situation with a lot of alternative minimum tax, probably should get someone, an accountant, CPA, involved in that process to make sure that these very specific and complicated laws are met. But we do have a module where you can enter in the information once it's been determined, yes, this is the information that should be entered for the alternative minimum tax. But determining the amounts that you would type in here, of course, that's the judgment that a tax professional would really be required in that particular situation. Okay, let's talk about the earned income credit that also is not automatically calculated, but we do put on the bottom of this, on the bottom part of the screen here, that the EIC may apply, but we would require you to check this box in order for it to actually apply. So the earned income credit does not automatically get checked, does not automatically get calculated and placed into the calculation of income for this particular client. Spousal maintenance, we assume that any spousal maintenance that is entered was ordered after 2019. You all might remember that major changes made in 2019 with respect to spousal maintenance, where prior to 2019, it was a deduction and it was a income for the receiver. It was a deduction for the payor. And after 2019, it no longer is that. And so we assume, since we're now in 2023, that spousal maintenance entered in the program was ordered after 2019. If it was ordered prior to 2019, then what you'd want to do is go in here and you'd want to check if ordered before 2019, you'd want to click that so that the appropriate tax calculations could be made. And then we did have for a short while, but now it has been sunset, was the additional child tax credit. That doesn't apply, and of course doesn't apply now in 2023. So those are the assumptions that are made by the program to give you this number right here. But of course, going into the tax options, Tax Calc 1040, and examining each one of these cells, this will make sure that the prospective calculation of taxes is accurate. And if you go in here, it gets pretty accurate, as long as, of course, the right information is entered here. I want to just discuss one other tax situation that probably you encounter quite a bit. And so I'm going to go into a case that I've set up here, SupportCalc. And the question that comes before us is, what do we do about alternating child tax credits? So here's a scenario that I've set up here. The scenario that I've set up is specifically to demonstrate this particular feature. So we have one party making $5,000 a month and another party making $2,000 a month. Let's say that you wanted to alternate the child tax credit. Well, that means that one person's income is going to be different on the odd years and the other person's income is going to be different on the even years. How do you calculate a child support order that, of course, needs to be the same in all years? Well, you would average the income for the odd years and the even years and the odd years and the even years and come up with the child support amount. And then that way you have the same child support obligation in months when it's an odd year or months when it's an even year. Okay. That creates a little bit of a challenge, though, in the specific situation that I have created here. And that is, you'll notice that this particular party has a child tax credit of only $26.67 a month. It should be $166 per month. But this particular party is only receiving $26.67. Why? Because of the income level. $2,000 by the time you take the standard deduction out and you have the taxable income, this is the tax liability is $26.67 per month. That is less than the child tax credit that a particular party would receive, because you can only receive a credit for the amounts of tax that you pay. And if we were to say that, so that would be if this particular party received the child tax credit. Now, in the years that this particular party receives the child tax credit, so I will make this 0. So let's talk about the other year. Well, the other year that this person receives a child tax credit, this person would receive the full $166.67. So when we are calculating to alternate the child tax credit every other year, we can't just take the $166.67, divide it into 2 and apply that to both parties, because some parties won't take both of those amounts in their year. They won't be able to take the maximum amount in their year. So we've created into SupportCalc this alternate these child tax credits every other year. If you click on that, then because this particular party gets $166 on the even years, they really average $83.34 per year. This particular party gets $26.67 every odd year, but their average is $13.33. So when you have a case and you have alternating child tax credits, all you need to do is click this button right here, and the program will automatically calculate the average of this child tax credit for each party. Most of the time, if the income of the parties are both right around the $5,000 amount, they will both just receive the $83.34, the half of what the 166 is. But there's the range of income under about $4,600, and depending upon the number of kids, of course, if you have more kids, then it would go up to $7,000 that you would have this particular property exist, and that is where the child tax credit can't be fully utilized by one of the parties. This takes care of that problem. So we wanted to make you aware of that. Now, this is not automatically checked. So if you want to make use this particular feature, you will need to go in and check that, because that's part of the case. This is part of the case facts that would have to be verified by you. So that kind of covers the tax situation, and I'm not able to get the chat, so I apologize very much, but I'm not able to see them on my screen right now. So if you have some questions about the tax module, this would be an excellent time to ask them.
Tim, point out number 2 there, the different filing statuses. We haven't talked about that one yet.
Okay, yes, right. So maybe I failed to mention, I thank you, Steve. I forgot to mention that the default is the obligor is single and the obligee is head of household. And then we, under the AutoCalc, the child tax credit, which goes along with that, the obligee would have the child tax credit, and the obligor would not have the child tax credit, which, of course, in order to have head of household, you need to have someone else in the household. And so that's so those are kind of coupled together. So that, again, is the default that the program uses, so that it can come up with some kind of number here, but of course needs to be examined very carefully to make sure that that is the real prospective tax situation.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but I'm a little overwhelmed. There's a lot to this. Not everything in here obviously is going to be something that you're going to use. And I imagine a lot of your facilitator cases, you don't have really complicated taxes. But anyway, just to be thorough, I guess, that's what we've done here. We're trying to accommodate the needs of people from really simple cases to really super complicated cases. And so, again, just give you the scope, and what we've done is probably what we're trying to do right now, is sparse specific cases, and how this could apply to the case that you're working on. We just have to leave that up to you. I mean, we're giving you a tool to use, and and how you apply that is something that's going to be determined by the particular case you're on.
And I did look at some of the chat, and there was a question about, is this taxable, and is this not taxable? And of course, SupportCalc doesn't make, we don't, when there are incomes other than the income that is other than the income categories on this tab, like unemployment income, for example, is not a line item on the child support schedule. And so that would be an example where you put in other income, and then it would be up to you to accurately check the boxes and make sure that it was or was not a part of any of these tax categories. So that's really that is where it would require looking that up. That is, we don't have a tool for all the different types of income. There's not a reference inside the software, because some of those get the unemployment's a pretty straightforward one, but some of these get really complicated and there are thresholds involved, and there are times when really a tax advisor, a tax professional should really be question. You should get some advice from a tax advisor on some of the more complicated and exotic kinds of income levels. Also want to mention one more thing. We talked about maintenance received. So the maintenance received is taxable here, and then the maintenance paid is taxable here. Again, if it was ordered before 2019, you would check this for for one on one screen and then for the other on the other screen, or maybe there were other maintenance orders that were for other families that this person was involved in that would also apply here. But here's where you would check the income and the deductions and whether or not it was before 2019 for that maintenance particular maintenance problem. Okay, I think pretty much covered the taxes. I'll send it back to you, Steve, and you can take it from here.
Everything we've entered so far has to do with what we call the standard calculation. This is all very mathematical. I mean, whatever you put in here is going to change the transfer payment amount. And, and then you come up with a number now that we call the standard calculation. The rest of the tabs are going to have to do with reasons for deviation. And these are going to have to be proposed to the judge, and the judge is going to have to make a ruling now whether they're going to accept these items as a reason for deviating from the standard calculation. So the additional factors screen, I would love to be able to live with you guys and see how many of you have ever filled this out. But
maybe you could indicate in the chat whether or not you use that, right?
Yeah. This has been in the child support guidelines since day one. It's all the other factors now, income of the kids, income of roommates, lots of different things here that someone may want to present to the court as a reason for deviating from the standard calculation number that we just came up with. And this is really where the disclosure to the court happens. And some of these items are going to be maybe really crucial to the case. Or maybe you don't even fill this in at all. I don't know. It's going to be up to you, but this is part of the worksheets. Want to make sure that we point that out to you so that you know why this screen is here. Some of this stuff has also been kind of replaced by the financial declaration. But anyway, that's what this screen's all about.
And I'm sorry, I'm sorry for interrupting. I just also want to mention 22C here. This is where the gross income for overtime from overtime or second jobs, the party is asking the court to exclude. So if the party is specifically working overtime to pay off a child support amount or other kinds of things, this is where you would enter that particular piece of information. So this may be one of the more important parts of this additional factors. I don't know. I'm just guessing at that.
Right. I mean, there was a time, when the child support guidelines didn't. I mean, if you worked overtime, you had to pay child support on that, but that has changed, and this is where you would then ask for exclusions based on the fact that it's temporary overtime to pay bills or past child support or something, not as an ongoing factor in the standard calculation. We've already talked a little bit about the text one. This is one.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we skipped the expenses. I'm wondering if maybe we should just circle back and hit that.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's some different items here that can be considered, by the court for a reason for deviating. Specifically, it used to be really important to fill in the medical expenses and things, and that has become less important as of a few years ago. But we still want to put in this particular case, looks like James has $150. Is that right? $185.
$185.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
that would be premiums for the children, not for the party involved here. So if there's extra amounts taken out, if it's wages for the particularly for the children, you want to list that. And then any expenses that are not covered by insurance, you want to make sure and put that in the appropriate party's spot as well, so that the those items are accounted for.
And you'd want to be sure to use the scratch pads. This is a great
Right.
place for the scratch pads as well, so that we could just we could determine, well, what are those uninsured expenses? And you put a little note here, and each one of these has their own little place where you could enter in the notes. And so the scratch pads would especially be useful inside the expenses tab for sure.
Daycare expenses is a federal item. It's not really part of the Washington state guidelines, but we had several judges out there say, well, you guys need to consider this because it's important, especially the lower the income of the parties, it becomes more important. Actually, it kind of it goes away when the income gets higher. But the federal tax care credit, child care credit, has to do with deductible items for daycare expenses. And so you put in the number of kids that are in daycare, what their daycare expenses are, and then the taxable income will come from what you previously entered in. And if there's any credit, then it will be displayed down below. And that you transfer, if you hit transfer payment or transfer parent right now, it will put the amount of daycare after any credits that were allowed by the tax code. So you'll see that number appear there.
So the argument is, what are actual childcare costs? Well, childcare costs could be the gross amount, but some may argue, well, childcare costs are actually net of any tax credits that someone would make.
Right.
So again, this is an argument that would be determined. The court would decide whether what does it mean to have childcare costs? Is it the gross amount you pay to the third party, or is it the amount you pay to the third party minus any amounts you'd get from a tax credit? Right. And that's a question to be determined by the court.
This can be added as auto comment. Bring that screen back up again. Then. And also we have an additional feature. You can view this. Click on the view button now. This is a little worksheet that we come up with that goes through all the different items here. This could also be printed out and attached to the worksheets if you wanted to do it that way. So there's even more options under this particular item. There are some other ones here, other special expenses. Depend again what your judge is going to allow you to do. Long distance transportation expenses. Again, if that's going to be allowed, again, it's going to be something the court's going to have to approve. Okay, then we got just a few minutes left here. Let's go over to the synopsis screen real quick and take a look. This is where, the real short answer to what we've done is showing up here. We have the net income of both parties now after the taxes were taken out, and then what the combined net income was. Tim, can you point that out to them? Yeah. And then what the ratio of income is between the parties. This goes back to our income shares model, which Washington State has adopted. And then from the table amounts over here. If we have income above the table, we actually have an extrapolation that we compute for you. If you're going to do that, we're more than happy to tell you exactly how we did that. It has to do with how the tables are trending, and we just extended that out. It's controversial, admittedly, but at least it gives you some kind of guidelines when income is higher than the table. Then we have the expenses, and then by ratio of income, what that ends up being for an obligation to each party, and credits for anything that would be a credit there. And if you look at the bottom line down there now, that number will be the same as our little box up above. So this is how we get to that And this is just a standard calculation. Okay. So it doesn't have to do with anything else that we're talking about. Let's go to the attachment screen real quick.
I have a favorite one I want to show before we get done, but
Okay.
I'll let you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to show this backup documentation that we've been talking about scratch pads and how you enter in information and notes about how you actually came up with the items that were entered on each one of these tabs. And we showed you how the scratch pads are available for income, deductions, expenses, and most of the other items here. When you click up on backup documentation, the program will automatically extract from all of the different scratch pads that you created both how it was calculated, so this is annually and this with the monthly amount, and then put in any little notes. So this is a nice little 1 page or 2 page, depending upon how many scratch pads you use. So all the income, all the deductions, this is a condensation of all the scratch pads that you've used, a very useful feature to get a quick idea about this case. So if you've been away from this case for a while, go to the backup documentation. You can read how all the scratch pads were calculated and the little notes that you put in that, and you can immediately become aware of the important factors of this case.
There you go. All right. So again, these are reasons for deviating. Some counties like to look at the residential credits, how many overnights the kids spend with each parent. We have a really nice little scratch pad that helps you figure that out. Tim, maybe you can show them that real fast. Yeah. Using
formula.
Right. So this is where you can change the threshold. If anybody that's familiar with the worksheet B, this is reproducing that in the program and allows you to, then argue for a deviation based on overnights above the threshold that each parent might want to be claiming. And whole and blended family, we could spend a lot of time talking about that, but I'm just going to go through it real quickly. This is other families that the obligor is responsible for. There are 2 different methods, the whole family and the blended family. I would run each one and see which applies to your case, because at this particular time in history, both of them are allowed by Washington law. Would be very careful though about the blended family, because if the obligor has income, we can show you the examples of this. It really does mess up the calculation on a blended family formula. The whole family formula actually just adds 1 more. So if there's 3 kids in this particular case and obligor person has another child support order somewhere, you just make everybody 1 more column over. So we just be looking at the 4-person column now. And that's all really what it does. Is big and long, and that's the basic thing. It's just really simply just moves everything over 1 column. Okay, anything else is of interest here? You guys, we want to help you out. I mean, tech@legalplus.com will get us directly. If you have some questions about anything on the program, please let us know. I think this is a great way to wrap it up. We're more than happy to, spend some one-on-one time with you, explaining something that you may not understand and something that we missed. I mean, we have an 8-hour seminar that we put on that explains our program. Obviously, we're not going to be able to go through everything that's in 1 hour that, this program does. We've had 34 years now to develop this program and listen to you guys out there and what you need. Some of it can be really complicated because that's what what our users want. So obviously we have not explained everything right now. So please let us know how we can help you out, how we can be there for you and explain things and help you make sure that your case is as accurate as we possibly can make it. So. I'm pretty much done. Anybody else have anything else we wanted to talk about before we're done?
And 1 chat just came in. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you are certainly welcome. And we appreciate your questions and comments. There are so many features to this program that we've developed over the the years that we've been doing this, that specific situations, you'd be surprised how we've accommodated very specific situations, because when you tell us that you need something in the software, we basically build it in, and we'd be very happy to answer any questions that you have and take any comments about how we may make the program better. So thank you again for joining us today. We appreciate so much your time and look forward to continuing to work with you on this.
And I
Absolutely.
went to that seminar that you guys did a few months
Oh.
ago, and it was really, really good. Like, everybody should definitely go to that if they can. So
Thank you.
thank you guys.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Great.
And it says someone's been using it since 1998. Well, okay. So that's
a while.
That's a while, and we've been doing this for a long time, and this is something that we enjoy. So we enjoy working with you and hearing your comments and making the program better as you suggested.
All right. Have a great
Okay.
day,
Well,
everybody.
thank you all very much, and we'll look forward to talking to you in the future.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.